Hello, honorable audience. Analytic program Way of Truth is on the air, and I am its presenter, Margarita Miranyuk. I introduce the guest of our studio, Vladislav Berdichevskiy, is the deputy of the chairman of the DPR People's Council Committee on External Policy and Foreign Affairs. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The main topic of the conversation was negotiations in Minsk and, not less important, demand of Ukraine to bring armed mission to Donbass.
There are no advances. Regular talks were held on the 31st of May and 1st June in Minsk. How the Foreign Affairs Minister Nikhanorova has reported today, these talks gave no results. We even see the retrogression, people who represent Ukraine at negotiations now, as Ivazovskaya, who have been appointed recently. They do not have a clue, not a clue, and only 3 questions of 12 were discussed. Highway route map that was mentioned earlier was not discussed this time. Personally, Poroshenko insisted on it. Talks are protracted gradually, and the retrogression is visible. There is nothing.
What about full operation of the Joint Center on Control Coordination?
As I know, the main its effectiveness. The problem with effectiveness is as a result of reduced staff. At the moment, representatives of Russia and the representatives of Ukraine are working. However, there are no representatives of the DPR. All this comes from Ukrainian side, inasmuch as they insist on representatives of the JCCC on our side to be Russian soldiers and on their side only Ukrainian soldiers. And there are no representatives from our side in the JCCC. Of course, it cuts all functions and does not let to work properly to the organ that is important and would provide data for the OSCE on moving of armament and on shelling. However, any progress is visible here. All sides of the conflict have to take part in the center. Unfortunately, they do this purposefully. As soon as they start accept our demands, it will say that they beat a retreat. Ukrainian cannot afford any advances in Minsk process and any fulfillment.
Moreover, armed forces held positions of so-called grey zones, while the DPR army did not leave its positions. In connection with this, shelling of our districts became more frequent. How does OSCE mission respond to this?
They do not respond to this at all, absolutely at all. In general, these zones were created in order not to have visible control between sides. Inasmuch provocation is, soldier will see and will start shooting. It is consumer grade. All these gray zones were created for this. Demarcation zone, however, Ukraine needs provocations, and that's why they break in gray zones, and they start shelling from them. Visible contact appears. They get ability to use small arms, heavy machine guns, and essentially mortars that are used constantly in shelling of Donetsk. OSCE that has to react firmly and to prevent all this. In theory, the OSCE is to come into these gray zones and to stay there, but they understand perfectly that it is dangerous, and there is no OSCE where danger is.
In connection with this, let's return back to the question on Ukraine demands to bring the armed mission in Donbass. As I know, it was not provided by Minsk Agreements, and it has not been still provided by them. This task was allotted at the OSCE mission. I stress that it is civil mission. How to react? For what Ukrainian is going to bring armed mission? And the Normand 4 is working now with this question. And how do the DPR authorities respond to this?
The third clause provides monitoring OSCE mission. It has been working since March 2014. It has the only function to monitor and note faithfully all facts of violations of agreements. For what to arm the mission, at least with small arms, is not clear for us because, at first, it is the reason for provocation, very serious cause. To shell armed mission means to involve armed mission as the third side. People will defend. Secondly, it was not foreseen. All 50 states members of the OSCE are to give consent. And essentially, it will take much time, and it will be coordinated many times, and without the guarantor Russian Federation, it will not happen. And thirdly, Any armed OSCE mission did not save in any state where were such military conflicts, not in Rwanda, Serbia, Kosovo. They can only target the mission and show this is, we did it. And they will start screaming that terrorists are here and separatists. Nevertheless, it is not beneficial for us to OSCE mission to suffer, because all the time it will be accused of this. Because we have not been recognized, initially according to world opinion, we are violators of all international agreements and laws. That's why we, I think, will not let to be here armed OSCE mission in any case. In order to provide control over elections is enough to have our armed police.
There
is a clause in Minsk Agreements that provides amnesty to people who took part in the conflict. How this direct is being worked out?
It is not advancing at all. The law was admitted by the Verkhovna Rada, and it is reduced and not clear enough, but it was adopted in 2015. Poroshenko did not sign it. Inasmuch, this question is raised all the time at the meetings of political groups in Minsk, and it is not advancing. We can say that Ukraine is not going to do something with this. And the work of all these sites as Mirotvorets, and there is one more side, I forgot the name, but it is headed by the chief of the police of the so-called Donetsk region, Abroshkin. Sites are updated all the time. People who do not have any connection to nothing. Average public employees of the DPR are added to the punishable to death list, cleanup list. It becomes visible that Ukrainian is not going to fulfill something, and it cannot, in this format of Ukrainian state, to do this. It cannot sign agreements, and it will not make concessions. I think we will all questions connected with political recognition, all political questions of our de facto existing structures, we will solve with another government of Ukraine.
I have to thank you for the conversation. And I remind to our audience that our guest today is Deputy of the Chairman of the DPR People's Council Committee on External Policy and Foreign Affairs, Vladislav Berdichevskiy. And I'm Margarita Miranyuk. Say goodbye to you and follow development of events together with us. Under the program worked Natalia Sinyavskaya and Zach Novak.